Perfect illusion. What happens when the image you've spent years crafting suddenly shatters in front of everyone you wanted to impress? That's the question I found myself facing in the most unexpected moment of my professional life. But to understand how dramatically that facade collapsed, you need to see how meticulously it was built in the first place. For nearly a decade, I had constructed what appeared to be the perfect professional identity. Every morning began with the ritual of transformation, selecting a suit from a closet organized by color and season, adjusting cufflinks that caught the light, just so as I rotated my wrist to check the time. My appearance was immaculate, calculated down to the subtlest details. The leather portfolio I carried cost more than my first car. Even my voice was trained to project authority, slightly deeper than my natural tone, with precisely timed pauses for emphasis. This was architecture. I was building a character that could move through corporate boardrooms with effortless authority. Someone whose PowerPoint presentations were legendary for their clarity and impact. Someone who never stumbled when answering questions, who could quote market statistics from memory, who seemed perpetually unflappable. And it worked. The promotions came faster than expected. Mentors took notice. Competitors grew nervous when I joined meetings. My reputation for delivering results became my calling card. If you want it done right, get them to handle it, became the whispered consensus. I created a professional brand so convincing that even I started to believe it, almost. But beneath this carefully orchestrated performance, this glass cathedral reflecting only perfection, a different reality was unfolding. Success demanded a punishing price. While colleagues saw the confident stride into morning meetings, nobody witnessed the 3 a.m. panic sessions rehearsing every possible question that might arise. They never saw the spreadsheets I obsessively checked dozens of times before presentations, terrified of a single error. The world saw achievement. I felt like a fraud who had somehow fooled everyone. The more acclaim I received, the more terrified I became of being discovered. Each success raised the stakes of potential failure. Each compliment felt like unwittingly setting a trap for myself. My imposter syndrome intensified with every achievement, a shadow growing longer as I climbed higher. This growing internal disconnect manifested physically. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford. 4 hours of rest became 3, then 2, until I was essentially running on stimulants and determination. My mind never quieted, constantly reviewing past interactions for mistakes nobody else noticed. The pressure created a strange doubling of consciousness. There was the external self moving confidently through professional spaces, making decisions and accepting accolades. And there was the internal observer, increasingly horrified at the fragility of this performance. I found myself standing in bathroom stalls before important meetings, desperately trying to control my breathing while my heart raced. I'd splash cold water on my face, straighten my tie with trembling fingers, and step back into the role. What makes this dual existence so exhausting is the vigilance required. Every interaction becomes a potential threat. A casual lunch with colleagues transforms into a minefield. Social events become endurance tests, where a single drink too many might crack the facade. The constant self-monitoring is relentless, leaving no space for authenticity. Over time, my identity became so thoroughly entangled with professional achievement that I couldn't imagine who I would be without it. When someone would ask about hobbies or interests outside work, I'd feel momentary panic. The character I'd built didn't have those dimensions fully developed. I'd offer generic responses, quickly steering conversations back to familiar professional territory. External validation became the only currency that mattered. The nods of approval from senior executives, the envious glances from peers. These moments of affirmation became the sole measure of my worth. Without them, there was only the void of who I might actually be beneath the performance. My body began sending increasingly urgent distress signals. Persistent headaches, digestive issues, constant muscle tension in my neck and shoulders. These weren't random malfunctions. They were desperate communications from a system under unsustainable pressure. My body was sending increasingly urgent memos that I continued to ignore. The tension headaches were pressure release valves for a mind that never stopped performing risk calculations. What I couldn't see then was how this perfect facade was constructing a rigid psychological prison. With each successful performance, with each promotion, the walls grew thicker. The persona that once felt like protection became confinement. Vulnerability or uncertainty weren't just unprofessional. They were existential threats to the identity I'd constructed. The tragic irony is that the more successful this professional image became, the more impossible it felt to step out of character. I'd created a role I could perform, but never truly inhabit, a character too perfect to accommodate human limitations. Each new accomplishment raised expectations further, widening the gap between image and reality. The pressure continued mounting. Bigger projects brought higher visibility and greater consequences for failure. My reputation preceded me into rooms, creating expectations that grew increasingly impossible to meet. I was drowning in plain sight, surrounded by people who envied my apparent success. What I didn't understand, yet, was that my perfect, professional image had actually set me up for an inevitable breakdown. Like a bridge built with beautiful but brittle materials, it could only bear so much weight before fracturing. The very facade that brought such apparent success was constructing an unsustainable psychological barrier between my authentic self and this projected identity. The qualities that made me effective, sensitivity, intuition, emotional awareness, had to be hidden away to maintain the illusion of unwavering strength. This perfect image was actively preventing the very connection and authenticity I secretly craved. The more convincing the performance became, the more isolated I felt inside it. Colleagues weren't relating to me, but to the carefully constructed persona I presented. Their approval wasn't validating my true self, but rather confirming the effectiveness of my disguise. As the gap between internal experience and external presentation widened, my psychological resources for maintaining this split were being depleted. I was running an ever-growing deficit, borrowing against a future collapse. What nobody in my professional circle could see was that this perfect professional image wasn't protection, but preparation for a spectacular unraveling.